All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what a time to be alive. Here we are. The Holly software was finally released for the Terminator X, and I wanted to go over some nuances back and forth. I already made myself a file for what I'm going to use with the red Mustang. So I went into a bunch of advanced tables and added stuff. One thing we'll cover as we go along is how to get this stuff done if you're starting from scratch. Mostly, I think that a bunch of you are going to use what I put out, when I put it out, when I test it all. But what I'd like to talk about is the cool stuff that is already in here that is awesome, or what I'd like to see changed, etc. So here is Cameron Power's Dominator tune, and you can see the software pretty much looks the same. So a lot of their suites for like the sniper and everything else are all based off of this system. So that's why they look very similar. And I like their interface. And I think it's, after getting used to it, I like it a lot. And also I feel like if you're starting from nothing, this is way easier to jump into than any other system like HP Tuners or Tuner Studio or a lot of other ones. They did a great job of making this stuff easy to access and simple looking and everything else. But what surprises me the most is the budget system and all of the options it has is very surprising. At least I think they did an incredible job. So we'll go through real quick, and the first one in the line is fuel. And the first thing I noticed was the fuel table's massive. So what a lot of people might not realize what they're looking at here is there's a lot of cells. There's a lot of resolution. So I scaled out a 3-bar map for 14 inches of vacuum and 32 pounds of boost. And I have like 2 PSI increments, sometimes 1 pound, all the way up and down here. Sometimes you end up with a smaller table and you need to skip rows and you end up with funny spots, or you need to give yourself more at cruise and a little bit less in boost, or if you have a high horsepower, high boost turbo car, you end up using a lot of down low and not up top. So one thing that's nice is it's gigantic. And then of course you can view it in graph view. And then here's the learn table. A lot of people might not realize the Holly learns in the background. Like say you're driving in this spot, like right out of boost at 2,000 RPM on the highway, and it's always pulling approximately 20% of fuel. There's just too much there. After a while, it learns that it's always pulling 20%, and it kind of works like a long-term fuel trim on a stock car where it's like, hey, I'm always pulling fuel there, so it kind of looks at the learn table and helps itself out so it doesn't have to work as hard. What you can do then is what's really awesome is you can drive around and you can see in a temperature map here, I'll show you when we get this on the car and running and everything else, you can roll in and out of this and you'll see it took out 10 here, it added 10 here, and it pulled 30% here. Say you made the tune safe, you threw a bunch of fuel at it, you go into your learn here, the learn has been pulling approximately 30%, you can hit transfer learn to base, it'll automatically make the fuel corrections, zero out the table, apply the changes to your base. Pretty awesome. And then under target, you can set up your target ratios here. And this is the air fuel you want. And then this is the simple version that the handheld uses. And then here is the 2D table where you can, like I said before, you can get very granular. You can choose, this is a huge table to get what you want out of that. So what also is neat is people were flipping out, including myself, about the map sensor. And there is no shortage of selection of map sensors, and you can make your own map sensor. Custom map? Here, you can, yeah, right here. You can enter your own voltage offset for a custom map sensor. Most people are probably going to use, a 3-bar. So the thing is here, people are kind of getting mad. They're like, oh, well, I need, what I do to make it simple for myself is I choose the Holly 3-bar sensor because it's scaled for roughly 30 pounds. And then you use this offset to make sure it's close to 100 kPa at idle, or not at idle, at key on. but that's a whole setup thing for later. So for right now, I'm just choosing their 3-bar. You can also do custom 3-bar and just enter your own offset, but I feel like it's easier a lot of times to choose their 3-bar, no matter what 3-bar sensor you're using, and then just fix your offset. Not all 3-bars are exactly the same as far as what you're gonna see. Some are a little bit taller, some are a little bit shorter. So it's awesome that they have that stuff in there. And the coolant temp sensor stuff is easy. You can choose your own. What's a neat thing here is you can see Chrysler and Ford sensors in here. So you can safely assume that this Chrysler and Ford stuff isn't far off, because obviously, again, this is the same architecture processor that the other systems have. The HP and the Dominator have the same wiring harness. I mean, they're not saying what they're doing, but this says a lot. Think about it, guys. It's coming. So, again, Holley sensors and Chrysler stuff and Ford stuff already set up. Nope, no Ford sensor. Never mind. Lying. And then right here is for the fuel pressure sensor. And then we can dive in here and we can see ECU configuration. There's a ton of stuff here. See, I mean, you can choose Terminator X or Max. That's what changes your option set. Just like Holley and Holley HP and Dominator have different settings. And then here is where you're going to do your injector setup. What's interesting is they have a ton of injectors in here. They have a ton. Like GM part numbers. They must work with FIC a lot. They have I don't know what you can't do with this run of FIC injectors right here, guys. And then the Holley ones are already dialed in here. And man, there's just a lot. And of course you can do a custom offset, which I did a custom one for the snake eaters I'm using. And then, yeah, you can change like your load-based fueling and everything else, all sorts of other options. Ignition is where you can switch from 24 tooth to 58 tooth, and then there's a custom rig also. Normally what this is intended for is if you have a funny LS setup and you want to go in and make your own offset. Say your ignition timing is off mechanically and you have crank trigger and everything else, this is what you would go into and change your custom settings. So sensor scalings and warnings, again, like this is where you can set up all of your, you can say when it gets hot, flash warnings and everything at me. Basic I/O, this stuff by default is on with the 2 fans and AC, like off the handheld, what I noticed. So you can change this stuff and do whatever you want. So I'm just going to use the 1 fan. What's cool is you can do a secondary fuel pump and give it all sorts of, you can say only turn on when, if all of this stuff is already on. People were flipping out about air conditioning. That stuff's in there. Idle air, kick, like it'll raise the idle slightly or a lot based off of when the air conditioning. It can do torque converter lockup, which is like a aftermarket lockup, or you could use this as maybe like a gear vendors if there's enough options. But basically, if you're going to be using 4L80E control, that stuff is handled in the transmission tab. And then in staging here, this is pretty cool. I think this is for the use of bump, or what you would call, turbo staging or whatever else. Let's see what they say. Air conditioning, TCC, staging. Used to program an output that can be turned off based on time. Ah, okay, interesting. So not turbo staging, but something else. So some of this stuff I don't understand. I don't use it. Closed loop, obviously. You can set up your fuel. Individual cylinder trims. You can see I touched this already. This is really cool. I didn't know if they would have this in here or not, so it's really nice to see it. For stock bottom end engines, for most engines, the back cylinders get the hottest. So if you'll see on Cameron's tune, we have the same exact thing going on. Individual cylinder, 2% of fuel and 2 degrees of timing out of the back cylinders, just to keep them safe, because it seems like you always have a problem with those back cylinders. So it's there. And then as far as inputs and outputs, this is where you can set your stuff up. That's it for that. There's a bunch of idle stuff in here. A lot of this stuff, I mean, obviously here's your idle speed. That's what you want for your speed. And here's settings for changing how it idles, how aggressively it comes to idle. A lot of stuff people probably won't touch too much. It's one of those things that's going to have to be gone over as part of an advanced thing. Parked is where it starts at temperature, so it's going to start at 50% open and then close down. And then we have the nice spark tables. So we have a gigantic spark table. Again, I roughed one out quick. And again, you can change the timing at cranking. Say you have a really high compression engine and it cranks awful, you can change the timing. Here's rev limiters, the main one. And then here is your two-step. So that's your two-step limiter right here. Launch retard they have built in. That's awesome also. You can, pull a timing retard off the launch. Max timing retard. So this is for retard per ring. So this is for the knock sensors. ES extra parameters, ESC. Timing restore rate. Yeah, so then you can set in here, like only pull 5 degrees here or pull up to 10 degrees here. So they have their own chart. So that's for the knock sensors. Timing versus coolant. If it gets hot, you can pull timing. If inlet temp gets out of control, you can pull timing. Also, if you have a blower car, if your inlet temperature, if you have like an air to water car and your water temp, like your inlet temperature is very low, you can add timing at lower inlet temperatures. And this is all, you can change the minimum and maximum and set your own scale up and everything. Once you enable like the launch limiter, you can go to inputs and then you can choose an input that enables the launch limiter. It's all very neat and easy to do. So this is another thing I went ahead and did. I knew I'd be running a flex fuel sensor on this car. So on inputs and outputs, I chose an input and frequency based and went into configure, and I hit the drop down here and they have GM flex fuel sensor right there. Just like in the other software here, in Cameron's flex fuel configure, bam, GM flex fuel sensor. So they carried over a lot of that good stuff. Dome is something I'm going to mess with the boost control. There is a whole slew of boost control options in here. The only thing I don't like so far is I wish they had single port, not dome, just single port. And then you could choose closed loop or open loop and set up a different model. I like the other model better as far as like Cameron's here. It's set to single port, it just says 3-port, and it's controlling based off of map. So, and then we have boost ramping in over time. So we're asking for 30. This is his almost 8-second pass, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But we're targeting 30. We're trying to get it to see what kind of duty cycle, but it's maxed out. So anyway, that's a subject for another day. And then the advanced tables, this is where you can do crazy stuff here. So you can choose basically any, you can make this do whatever you want is what's cool. So this one is out of their user manual to add fuel based off of flex fuel percentage. So you can see how I enabled it and I named it flex fuel multiplier. And then they have a bunch of different ways to do it, but the way I do it, and it works great, and I've tested working, so I'm using it again, is the fuel flow multiplier. So it looks at the percentage, and then say there's 33% flex, it's adding 12% more fuel. So you set up this whole chart, you say, x-axis off flex fuel. You can also do stuff like change the boost amount based off of flex, or you could do, if you have a speed sensor input, you can do this is mile an hour and this is boost duty cycle, or you can see how these start to give you a lot of options as far as what you want to do. And then where are we at? There's other tables, like by gear. You can go in here and you can say that you have 3 gears and you're going to use RPM drops to count them. And then you can, anyway, you can have it do multiple stages of something based off of gears. Another neat thing I noticed they added is the new comparison tool. You can load another tune in here, or up to a few of them, it looks like comparison file wise, and you can see what's different and easily copy them over to your base. So say I went through and I did this, it takes a little bit to punch all this stuff in. It's not awful, and I have experience with it, but it's annoying if you're doing a lot of cars or helping somebody out and you have to enter all of this. What you can do is open your tune, open this one as a comparison, and then just dump everything over. You would go to advanced table, one of the 1D tables, and you would go copy to base. And it dumps all the settings in for you. And you can go right back in and be like, oh yeah, there it is. It worked. The copy over worked. I didn't have to waste my time doing all sorts of crazy stuff. So what I think is neat is all of that is available. I can't wait to, Mark is doing the hot side and cold side and some other stuff to the car. So when we get it back, hopefully it started in less than a week or two, and we'll see how this stuff goes. And then from there, there's just button some stuff up and throw it on the dyno, and then we can see how this whole system works out. But there's like a quick look-see for people that are wondering how this software works, how it's going to work, what it looks like. If you didn't see, Holly puts up videos like this also. Maybe you were just waiting to check out what I had to say. I think it's incredible that it's pretty much the same thing as the rest of their stuff. There is a ton of features they are giving you for the money. It's incredible. So the only thing, like I said, I would like to see different is the boost control stuff, which they said they're going to, that'll be something they obviously look into. And another thing is they want to add things over time as they've done through the other systems too. So there's a whole dump of stuff.